Hands where I can see them. What's a girl like you doing with a car this expensive? Drug money? The white officer's hand rests on his weapon as he circles the black woman's Mercedes. Diane Reynolds sits perfectly still, her expression composed as Officer Brennan looms outside her driver's window. The morning rush hour traffic flows around them on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Brennan raps his knuckles against her window, exchanging a knowing look with Officer Kowalski. "Says she's a lawyer," Brennan announces loudly, voice dripping with disbelief. "Right." Minutes later, Diane stands spread-eagle against her car's hood. Her Prada purse contents scatter across the metal surface. Montblanc pen clattering, legal documents spilling onto the pavement. Smartphones emerge from the growing crowd. The officers chuckle as they inspect her belongings. Diane's eyes lock with Brennan's. "I'd like your badge number, please." "Sure thing, counselor, right after we finish our stop-and-frisk procedure." The woman's phone rings, and the caller ID flashes Governor's office. State Attorney Diane Reynolds navigates her silver Mercedes through the city's West Side district, an area she rarely visits in person but knows intimately through case files. At 42, she carries herself with the practiced composure of someone accustomed to being the only black woman in rooms of power. She deliberately chose this route today, a first-hand look at the neighborhood generating the most racial profiling complaints across her desk. The streets bustle with morning commuters, predominantly black and Latino residents heading to work. In their patrol car, officers Mike Brennan and Jason Kowalski idle at an intersection. Brennan, a 15-year veteran with 3 disciplinary marks buried in his file, notices the luxury sedan. "Check that out," Brennan nudges his partner. "Mercedes S-Class in this neighborhood?" Kowalski follows his gaze. "Suspicious?" "Definitely not local. Probably some dealer showing off." Brennan straightens in his seat. "Let's see what's up." Diane spots the patrol car in her rearview mirror, noting how the officers track her movement. She recognizes the predatory attention, the same pattern detailed in countless statements from community members. Her hand slides to the legal pad on the passenger seat. She begins documenting. 8:47 a.m. Patrol car, number 24-117. Officers visible. White males. Approx. 30-45 years old. The patrol car pulls behind her at the stoplight. Lights suddenly flashing. Diane takes a deep breath, centering herself. She's reviewed 73 similar stops from this precinct in the past month alone. The difference today, she's experiencing it firsthand. From the patrol car, Brennan watches Diane carefully. "Bet you $50 the car's registered to someone else, probably her boyfriend's. Or stolen," Kowalski adds, hand resting on his holster as they approach. Diane rolls her window down precisely 3 inches, enough to communicate, not enough to allow unwanted access. She keeps her hands visible on the steering wheel, a practice she's advised countless clients to follow. The gold state attorney pin on her lapel remains just out of sight beneath her blazer. Officer Brennan approaches, face arranged in practiced authority. "License and registration," he demands, then adds under his breath to his partner, "Let's see what kind of story she's got." Diane's fingers close around her credentials, but she hesitates, making a split-second decision that will change everything. "Here you are, officer." Diane passes her license and registration through the narrow window opening. She deliberately offers her standard Bar Association ID rather than her state attorney credentials. Brennan studies her license, skepticism etching deeper into his features with each passing second. "Diane Reynolds, attorney at law?" His tone makes the title sound fictional. "That's correct." Her voice remains neutral, professional. "And what brings an attorney to this neighborhood this morning?" Brennan emphasizes the word as if questioning its validity. "I'm traveling to a meeting." Diane offers nothing more, mentally recording each inappropriate question. Kowalski takes her documents, returning to the patrol car to run her information. Through her side mirror, Diane watches him punch keys on the cruiser's computer while Brennan continues his interrogation. "This is an expensive car for this neighborhood. Brennan taps her window frame. You sure you didn't make a wrong turn somewhere? I know exactly where I am, Officer Brennan. She pointedly uses his name visible on his badge. Brennan's eyes narrow at her deliberate name check. You know a lot of people around here? I know the city well. Each vague answer is calculated, giving them nothing while documenting their fishing expedition. At the patrol car, Kowalski frowns at his screen. He returns, leaning close to his partner. Car checks out. Registered to her. No warrants. Clean record. Something doesn't feel right, Brennan mutters. People like her don't just drive through here without a reason. Diane catches the exchange, recognizing the exact phrasing from complaint number 24 R117. Officer stated, something doesn't feel right, despite no evidence of wrongdoing. Officers, she interjects, may I ask what traffic violation prompted this stop? The question visibly irritates Brennan. Routine traffic stop, ma'am. What specific violation did you observe? Brennan's jaw tightens. We don't need to explain our procedures to you. Diane notices a small crowd gathering on the sidewalk. A young woman with braids pulls out her phone, pointing it toward the scene. 3 more phones appear among the bystanders. Brennan sees the growing audience and scowls. His hand shifts to his belt. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am, he orders, hand shifting to his holster. We need to conduct a search. A cold, familiar weight settles in Diane's stomach. She's no longer the state attorney studying case files, but another black body being ordered onto the street. Diane exits her vehicle with deliberate, measured movements. The morning air feels suddenly colder against her skin. She stands tall in her tailored suit, a stark contrast to the officer's confrontational stance. Face the vehicle and place your hands on the hood, Brennan instructs, his voice carrying to the growing crowd. She complies, maintaining her dignity as her palms meet the sun-warmed metal of her Mercedes. The position is deliberately humiliating, a power display meant to diminish her. Diane's law school graduation photo flashes in her mind, the proud smile that believed justice was blind. Officer Kowalski begins the pat-down, his hands moving with unnecessary thoroughness across her body. Nice suit, he comments. Public defenders making better money these days? Brennan smirks. Probably not a public defender, probably corporate, defending the rich getting richer. I practice constitutional law, Diane states simply, her voice steady despite the violation of her physical space. Hear that, Jason? We got ourselves a constitutional scholar. Brennan reaches for her purse on the passenger seat. Let's see what Professor Reynolds is carrying today. He dumps the contents onto the hood beside her splayed hands. Her wallet, phone, keys, makeup bag, business cards, and legal notes scatter across the surface. Her state attorney badge remains hidden in an interior zippered compartment. The crowd has doubled in size. At least 8 phones now record the scene. A young black woman steps forward slightly. This isn't right. She hasn't done anything. Step back, Kowalski barks, unless you want to be arrested for obstruction. You have the right to record from a reasonable distance, Diane calls to the woman, maintaining eye contact with Brennan. Stay on the public sidewalk and keep your hands visible. Brennan's expression darkens. Look at Perry Mason here, giving out free legal advice. You watch too much Law and Order, lady, Kowalski adds, examining her wallet. Who told you that you could speak? Am I being detained? Diane asks clearly, her voice carrying to the recording devices. And if so, on what grounds? We're conducting an investigation, Brennan replies, rifling through her belongings with growing frustration. You're being awfully uncooperative for someone with nothing to hide. I've provided my identification and complied with your instructions, Diane responds. Asking about the legal basis for my detention is not uncooperative. Brennan's frustration grows visible. He's encountered resistance before, but rarely so composed, so knowledgeable. For someone claiming to be a lawyer, you're acting pretty suspicious. Maybe you're hiding something else. Diane's phone lights up on the hood, vibrating with an incoming call. The screen displays Chief of Staff with a government seal background image. Brennan notices reaching for the phone, but stops when Diane speaks. "That's private property, Officer Brennan. You need a warrant to search the contents of my phone." His fingers hover above the screen, then divert to a business card case nearby. He flips it open, pausing as he sees the embossed Golden State seal on the premium cards inside. Brennan's expression shifts from smugness to the first flicker of uncertainty as he stares at the official state emblem gleaming in the morning light. Diane's phone continues vibrating. With Brennan momentarily distracted by her business cards, she reaches slowly for it. "I need to take this call," she states, not asking permission. Brennan starts to object, but hesitates, the official seal on her cards introducing a seed of doubt. She answers the phone, maintaining eye contact with him. "Reynolds speaking." Her voice is measured, revealing nothing of her circumstances. "Diane, where are you?" Her Chief of Staff, Marcus Wilson's concerned voice comes through. "The governor's waiting for your briefing on the profiling initiative." Diane turns slightly away from the officers, lowering her voice. "I'm witnessing firsthand what we've been documenting. Precinct 24. Marcus immediately understands. "Are you being detained? Do you need intervention?" "Yes, exactly as reported. No, don't intervene. This needs to play out." She keeps her responses coded but clear enough for Marcus to understand. "Are you sure? We could have this shut down in seconds." "Completely sure. I'll be delayed approximately 30 minutes. She ends the call, sliding the phone into her jacket pocket before Brennan can object. His suspicion has visibly heightened after hearing her cryptic conversation. "Who was that?" he demands. "My office," Diane replies simply. 6 months ago, sitting in her newly assigned state attorney office, Diane had reviewed the 5th similar profiling complaint that week. The pattern was undeniable, yet previous administrations had failed to address it. "How do we make them see this?" she'd asked Marcus. "They'll never see it until it affects someone they can't ignore," he'd responded. Now, standing against her car, that memory crystallizes into purpose. This isn't just happening to her. It's happening to her so she can change it for others. Kowalski pulls Brennan aside, speaking in hushed tones. "Mike, her credentials look legit. The car checks out. I think we should wrap this up." "Something's off," Brennan insists, too proud to retreat. No normal lawyer acts this calm during a stop. She's hiding something. Diane observes their whispered conference, recognizing the moment of uncertainty. She deliberately remains silent, allowing their doubt to grow. 2 more patrol cars arrive, officers stepping out to assess the situation. Diane recognizes Officer Terrence Jenkins from personnel files. 3 excessive force complaints, all dismissed. Beside him, Sergeant Williams, recently transferred from another precinct after similar issues. The folder labeled Precinct 24 Profiling Task Force flashes in her mind. 12 weeks of investigation, 23 victim statements, and statistical evidence showing black drivers 8 times more likely to be stopped in this district. Now she has become Case 24. Diane straightens her jacket, a silent vow forming in her mind. This stop will be different from the others, not because she's experiencing it, but because it will be the last of its kind. She mentally maps the changes already drafted in her office. Mandatory body cameras, civilian oversight board, transparent complaint processes, precinct-specific anti-bias training. "You know what?" Brennan says, returning to Diane with false confidence. "I think we need to take you down to the station to sort this out." Something in Diane's expression shifts. The compliant citizen vanishes, replaced by a woman who has spent her career preparing for precisely this moment. "I will not be going to the station, Officer Brennan." Diane's voice carries quiet authority. "You have no probable cause to detain me further. Under Terry v. Ohio, you need reasonable suspicion of a crime to justify this stop, which you've failed to articulate." Brennan blinks, momentarily thrown by her precise legal citation. His confusion quickly hardens into aggression. "Refusing to comply with a police order is obstruction of justice," he counters, stepping closer. "I'm not asking, I'm telling you. I've identified myself, answered your questions, and permitted an unwarranted search of my vehicle and person. Diane stands her ground. Without probable cause, further detention constitutes an illegal arrest under the Fourth Amendment. The gathering crowd has grown to nearly 30 people. Murmurs ripple through the onlookers, phones still recording steadily. A police sergeant approaches, his pace quickening as he observes the confrontation. "What's the situation here, Brennan?" "Suspicious vehicle, Sergeant. Drivers being uncooperative, refusing to accompany us to the station for further questioning." Brennan's portrayal deliberately omits his failure to establish any valid reason for the stop. "And your grounds for taking her in?" the sergeant asks, eyeing the professional woman and the scattered contents of her purse. "She's acting evasive. Doesn't make sense for someone like her to be in this neighborhood." Diane addresses the sergeant directly. "I'd like your name and badge number, please. I've been detained for 15 minutes without any citation of a traffic violation or reasonable suspicion of a crime." The sergeant hesitates, sensing the precarious ground. "Sergeant Phillips, ma'am. Badge number 24075. Diane commits it to memory, noting how Phillips' eyes dart to the recording bystanders. She deliberately places her phone on the hood of her car, its camera facing the officers, and presses record. "I'm exercising my right to document this interaction." Kowalski steps forward, reaching for the device. "You can't record." Glick v. Cuniff established citizens' First Amendment right to record police officers performing their duties in public, Diane interrupts. "Additionally, your department's own policy manual, Section 3.14, explicitly permits civilian recording of police interactions." The sergeant's posture changes, discomfort evident as he recognizes someone intimately familiar with laws most citizens never cite. A police lieutenant exits his newly arrived vehicle, scanning the scene. His eyes land on Diane, and the blood drains from his face. "Jesus Christ," the lieutenant whispers, too quietly for anyone but the sergeant to hear. "That's the new state attorney." Lieutenant Morris rushes toward the scene, his normally commanding presence now radiating barely contained panic. He positions himself between Diane and the officers, his back to her. "Officer Brennan, what seems to be the issue here?" His voice is deliberately casual, a stark contrast to his rigid posture. "Suspicious vehicle, sir. Driver was evasive about her purpose in the neighborhood. We're about to transport her for further questioning." Morris's eyes widen slightly. "I see. And the specific violation that initiated the stop?" Brennan shifts uncomfortably. "Vehicle was driving too slowly, impeding traffic." Diane observes the lieutenant's intervention with analytical precision. His body language, the careful phrasing, the subtle attempt to diffuse without exposing the officer's error, all of it revealing departmental dynamics she couldn't glean from paper reports. "I don't think that will be necessary," Morris says quietly. "I'll handle this personally," and Brennan's jaw tightens, suspicion flaring in his eyes. "With all due respect, Lieutenant, we've already begun processing this suspect. If we start giving special treatment—" "This isn't about special treatment, officer," Morris interrupts, voice lowered. "It's about procedure." "Procedure?" Brennan challenges, louder than necessary. "Since when do lieutenants respond to routine traffic stops? This looks political to me." From her position against the car, Diane remains deliberately silent, allowing the fracture in command to expose itself. Each word exchanged adds to her mental case file against Precinct 24. The crowd continues to grow. A news van from Channel 8 parks across the street, a reporter and cameraman emerging cautiously. Morris notices and pales further. "Officer Brennan, conclude your business here immediately." Diane spots three familiar faces at the edge of the gathering, junior attorneys from her office, alerted by her chief of staff. Their presence confirms her message was understood. They're not here to intervene, but to witness. She thinks of the task force whiteboard in her office, where Officer Michael Brennan's name appears under repeat offenders. 7 complaints of racial profiling in 18 months, all dismissed without investigation. Case number 8 will be different. Kowalski, increasingly uncomfortable with the escalating situation, steps away to examine the contents of Diane's purse more thoroughly. He unzips the interior compartment, freezing when his fingers touch cold metal. He pulls out a gold badge, the words "State Attorney" prominently displayed above the state seal. His eyes widen in horror as he whispers urgently to Brennan, "We have a serious problem." The lieutenant's phone rings, and he answers to hear the police chief's voice boom loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Tell me you haven't arrested her." "No, sir, we're just concluding a routine traffic stop," Lieutenant Morris responds, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. He cups his hand over the phone, but the chief's agitated voice carries. "That's the new state attorney, you idiot! The one heading the profiling task force!" Kowalski tugs desperately at Brennan's sleeve, showing him the badge. "Mike, we need to end this. Now!" Brennan glances at the badge, but pride overrides his judgment. Could be anyone's. Could be. Probably borrowed it from someone she knows. Diane straightens her posture, brushing imaginary dust from her suit jacket. "I'd like my belongings returned, officers. Immediately." Her voice has transformed, the measured compliance replaced by unmistakable authority. "We're still conducting our investigation," Brennan insists, his stubborn refusal to yield now clearly personal. "For all we know, this badge could be counterfeit." The news crew edges closer, camera rolling. Lieutenant Morris ends his call, approaching with newfound urgency. "Officer Brennan, return Ms. Reynolds' belongings and conclude this stop." The order is unambiguous. Brennan turns to his superior, frustration evident. "Sir, with respect, we can't just let people flash badges and walk away. If we give special treatment to her kind—" "Her kind?" Diane repeats, voice cutting through the tension. "You know what I mean," Brennan continues, digging his hole deeper. "These affirmative action appointments. Every department getting their diversity hire. Pushing qualified people aside so they can check their boxes." A collective gasp rises from the onlookers. Diane makes no visible reaction, but she reaches for her phone and ensures it's still recording. Lieutenant Morris physically positions himself between Brennan and Diane. "That's enough, officer." Diane locks eyes with the lieutenant, giving a slight nod acknowledging his attempt to salvage the unsalvageable situation. She notes his name for later. Someone with the sense to recognize a catastrophe in progress, even if too late to prevent it. A black SUV with government plates screeches to a halt at the perimeter. The police chief emerges, straightening his uniform as he pushes through the crowd with determined strides. Brennan, still oblivious to the magnitude of his error, continues gathering Diane's belongings with deliberate slowness, muttering about protocol and procedure. The chief reaches the inner circle, face flushed with a combination of exertion and alarm. He takes in the scene, the scattered contents of the purse, the recording bystanders, the news crew, and Diane's composed expression. "Officer Brennan," the police chief says in a strangled voice, "I see you've met our new state attorney." Tipka. In the sudden silence that follows, the only sound is the gentle click of Diane stopping her phone's recording and the whispered, "Oh shit," from Officer Kowalski. For 3 heartbeats, no one moves. Officer Brennan's face performs an impressive transformation: confusion, disbelief, recognition, and finally, the sickly pallor of career-ending realization. Diane calmly collects her phone from the hood, then begins gathering her scattered belongings one by one. Her movements are unhurried, deliberate. She maintains eye contact with Brennan as she reclaims each item he had so carelessly tossed. Brennan's mind races through every word, every insinuation, every procedural violation of the past 20 minutes. The racial comments, the baseless stop, the illegal search, all performed on the highest-ranking prosecutor in the state. His throat works convulsively, but no words emerge. "State Attorney Reynolds," the police chief begins, his voice pitched unnaturally high. "I can't express how deeply I regret this misunderstanding. If you'll allow me to—" "This wasn't a misunderstanding, Chief Rogers." Diane's voice remains level as she places her last items back in her purse. This was a textbook example of the exact behavior my office has been investigating in Precinct 24 for the past 3 months. The chief flinches visibly. This isn't about me, Diane continues, addressing both the chief and the gathered crowd. It's about every citizen who doesn't have state attorney on their business card. Every person who gets stopped in this neighborhood without cause. Every individual who experiences what I just did, but lacks the power to make it stop. She turns to face the bystanders directly, many still recording. What you witnessed today is why my office has established a task force specifically investigating racial profiling in police stops. Today, I became case number 24. Kowalski's posture has collapsed, his earlier confidence evaporated. Brennan maintains a rigid stance, but sweat now darkens his collar despite the cool morning. The state attorney was driving through this neighborhood? Someone in the crowd asks incredulously. I was. Diane nods. Deliberately. After reviewing 73 similar complaints from this precinct in the past quarter, I decided to experience the conditions firsthand. I didn't anticipate becoming statistical evidence quite so quickly. Lieutenant Morris approaches the chief, speaking in hushed tones about damage control. The chief's eyes dart between Diane, the news crew, and his officers. State Attorney Reynolds has been instrumental in launching our new community policing initiative, the chief attempts, the hasty pivot to public relations painfully transparent. An initiative your department has resisted at every turn, Diane corrects calmly. Until this moment, perhaps. She turns to address the gathering, which has now swelled to include shopkeepers, residents, and passers-by. She speaks with the practiced clarity of someone accustomed to addressing juries. My office will be expanding our investigation into discriminatory policing practices. If you've experienced similar treatment, I encourage you to contact the state attorney's task force. She produces business cards from her recovered case, distributing them to those nearest. These videos are evidence. I would appreciate copies sent to the email on these cards. Flashing back to her appointment ceremony 6 months ago, Diane had sworn to address systemic injustice within the criminal justice system. Standing here now, she realizes this moment, however unplanned, may accomplish more than months of closed-door meetings. Officer Brennan, Officer Kowalski, she says, turning back to face them. I'll need you both in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Lieutenant Morris, please ensure they're available. The chief steps forward. State Attorney, perhaps we could discuss this privately at a more convenient time. This stopped being a private matter the moment your officers decided to conduct an illegal stop and search in full public view, Chief Rogers. Her tone brooks no argument. My task force will require full cooperation, including body camera footage, dash cam recordings, and complete personnel files for these officers by end of business today. Brennan finally finds his voice. With all due respect, ma'am, we were just following standard protocol for suspicious... There was nothing suspicious about my presence here except my skin color, Officer Brennan, Diane interrupts. And standard protocol does not supersede constitutional rights. You knew that before stopping me, which makes this not a mistake but a choice. She closes her purse with a definitive snap, then turns to the chief. I trust these officers will face appropriate consequences. But more importantly, I expect structural changes to prevent this from happening to citizens without my resources and position. Diane walks back to her driver's side door, opens it, and pauses. Officer Brennan, Officer Kowalski, she says with calm authority. I'll need you both in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. As she slides into her Mercedes, Diane whispers to herself, this ends now. And 3 decades of professional restraint finally give way to a single tear of rage. By sunset, Diane's traffic stop has transformed from incident to phenomenon. Cell phone videos flood social media platforms, each new angle revealing additional details of the officer's misconduct. Cable news chyrons flash, state attorney racially profiled, and top prosecutor experiences bias firsthand. The police department's initial press statement calls it an unfortunate misunderstanding during routine patrol operations. This characterization evaporates when the third video surfaces, capturing Brennan's affirmative action comment in high definition. Diane sits in her office, blinds drawn against the media encampment forming outside the state attorney building. Her desktop displays 4 video screens simultaneously, 3 civilian recordings alongside Officer Kowalski's body camera footage, reluctantly provided after her formal demand. The discrepancies are telling, she notes to Marcus, her chief of staff, who stands behind her chair. Notice how Kowalski's camera conveniently tilts downward during key exchanges. Technical malfunction, they'll claim, Marcus replies, disgust evident in his voice. Cross-reference with bystander video 2, timestamp 8:52 a.m. Diane points to the corresponding screen. Camera angle shifts precisely when Brennan begins questioning my credentials. Her task force team, 5 attorneys and 2 data analysts, crowd around her desk, documenting each procedural violation. Junior attorney Eliza Morris maintains the running tally. That's 14 separate violations in 23 minutes of interaction. The office phone rings for the 12th time that hour. Marcus checks the display. Governor Thompson again? Diane takes the call, activating the speakerphone. Governor, I was just reviewing the evidence. This is a political powder keg, Diane. The governor's voice carries tension even through the speaker. The optics are explosive. How do you want to handle it? Not as optics, Governor, as a systemic failure requiring systemic solutions. Diane's voice remains measured. The reform package I presented last month, the one tabled as too ambitious, I'm resubmitting it tomorrow with these videos as supporting evidence. Silence hangs briefly. You'll have my full support, the governor finally says, political calculation evident in his tone shift. Whatever resources you need. After the call ends, Marcus raises an eyebrow. Convenient how quickly priorities change when cameras are rolling. We use the momentum, Diane responds pragmatically. The public is watching now. Across town, the police union leadership convenes an emergency meeting. Representatives from 4 precincts crowd into a conference room designed for half their number. This is a witch hunt, Union President Greg Hoffman declares. Officers followed procedure for a suspicious vehicle in a high-crime area. A suspicious vehicle driven by the state attorney, Lieutenant Morris counters, having been summoned to explain the incident. Who happens to head the profiling task force we've been stonewalling for months? Unfortunate coincidence, Hoffman dismisses. There's nothing coincidental about it. Morris throws a folder onto the table. Reynolds has been building this case for months. 23 previous incidents documented, all following the same pattern. Brennan appears in 5 of them. Silence blankets the room as implications settle. Meanwhile, Brennan paces his apartment, phone pressed to his ear. They can't prove intent, he insists to the union lawyer. I didn't know who she was? That's precisely the problem, the lawyer responds wearily. You didn't need to know. The stop itself was baseless, Mike. No traffic violation, no reasonable suspicion articulated at the scene. The racial comments are indefensible. It wasn't about race, Brennan protests weakly. Tell that to the 2 million people who've watched you suggest the state attorney got her job through affirmative action. In her office, Diane meets with community leaders from the affected neighborhood. Pastor James Williams, a longtime civil rights advocate, shakes his head as the videos play. We've filed these complaints for years, he says. Hundreds of them. Always dismissed, always explained away. Not anymore, Diane promises, sliding a document across the table. This is the expanded task force charter. I need community representatives, people who've experienced these stops, who understand the human cost. The pastor studies the document. You're giving civilians oversight authority? Limited but real, Diane confirms. Review powers for complaint dismissals, input on policy reforms, and direct reporting lines to my office. 3 floors above them, Police Chief Rogers faces his command staff in the commissioner's conference room. Projected on the wall are statistical breakdowns of the precinct's stop-and-frisk data for the past 18 months. These numbers are indefensible, the commissioner states flatly. Black drivers are 8 times more likely to be stopped than white drivers in Precinct 24. Searches conducted on 63% of black motorists versus 17% of white motorists. Context matters, Rogers attempts. Neighborhood demographics. Save it. The commissioner cuts him off. The state attorney has the data, the videos, and now first-hand experience. Either we get ahead of this with meaningful reforms, or she'll force them through the courts. Back in her office, Diane prepares for the morning's confrontation. Pull Brennan's complete personnel file, she instructs Eliza. Every complaint, every supervisor notation, every performance review. Already done. Eliza places a thick folder on her desk. 7 formal complaints for racial profiling, all dismissed. 3 excessive force allegations, similarly dismissed. But here's what's interesting. She points to a notation. Internal Affairs actually recommended discipline twice, overruled by command staff both times. Diane isn't surprised. And Kowalski? Newer officer, partner to Brennan for 8 months. 1 prior complaint, also dismissed. Diane considers this information. Different approaches will be needed for each. The next morning, the officers arrive separately for their 9 a.m. meeting. Kowalski appears first, 30 minutes early, visibly anxious in an ill-fitting suit. Brennan arrives precisely on time, union representative in tow, wearing defiant confidence like armor. They sit in Diane's waiting area, not speaking to each other. At 9:05, Marcus leads them into the state attorney's spacious office. Diane stands behind her desk, no longer the woman forced against her car hood, but the state's chief prosecutor in her domain of power. The contrast is deliberate and striking. Officer Kowalski, Officer Brennan, she acknowledges, gesturing to chairs positioned before her desk. And Mr. Davidson from the union, thank you for coming. She sits, opening a folder identical to those placed before each of them. These documents detail 24 incidents of racially motivated traffic stops in Precinct 24 over the past 6 months. Statistical evidence demonstrates a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. Body camera footage, civilian recordings, and officer statements establish a clear violation of departmental policies and constitutional protections. Brennan's union representative leans forward. State Attorney Reynolds, we understand yesterday's incident was regrettable, but Officer Brennan was simply, yesterday wasn't an incident, Mr. Davidson. It was case number 24. Diane's tone remains professional but unyielding, one that happens to be uniquely well documented. She turns to Kowalski, whose discomfort has visibly intensified. Officer Kowalski, you've been with the department for 18 months. Prior to partnering with Officer Brennan, you had no complaints filed against you. Since then, you've accumulated one. Kowalski swallows hard but says nothing. Officer Brennan, she continues, your record shows 7 similar complaints, all dismissed without thorough investigation. Brennan sits straighter. Complaints aren't evidence of wrongdoing. Anyone can file a complaint. True, Diane acknowledges. Which is why we've conducted our own investigation, including statistical analysis of your stop patterns compared to departmental averages. The findings are troubling. She slides a document forward. These are your options, gentlemen. Option 1, cooperation with our reform initiative. Full testimony regarding departmental practices, complete transparency about how these stops are conducted and why. In exchange, I focus on systemic changes rather than individual prosecutions. And option 2, the union representative asks cautiously, I prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. Diane's expression remains neutral. Violation of civil rights under color of law, illegal search and seizure, filing false reports. For Officer Brennan, given his history, pattern, and practice violations that carry significantly heavier penalties. Silence hangs in the air before Diane continues. We have enough evidence to end careers, she tells the officers calmly. But what I really want is to change the system. The question is, will you be examples or allies? Kowalski speaks first, voice barely audible. What would cooperation look like exactly? honest testimony, retraining, community service hours in the affected neighborhoods, and your commitment to the new oversight protocols we're implementing. Brennan scoffs. So either we admit to being racists or you destroy our careers? Some choice. This isn't about admitting to being racist, Officer Brennan. It's about acknowledging that a pattern exists and committing to changing it. Diane leans forward slightly. The evidence exists regardless of your cooperation. I'm offering a path toward reform that doesn't necessitate your professional destruction. The union representative whispers urgently to Brennan, who shakes his head stubbornly. My client needs time to consider these options, Davidson finally says. You have 48 hours, Diane responds, standing to signal the meeting's conclusion. After that, I proceed with option 2. As they exit her office, Diane calls after them. One more thing, officers. Effective immediately, neither of you will be conducting traffic stops pending the outcome of this investigation. Chief Rogers has already agreed to this stipulation. Brennan turns back, anger flashing across his face. This isn't over, he says, just loud enough for her to hear. Diane watches them leave, then picks up her phone to call the governor. It's time to move on the legislation. All of it. The police department hearing room buzzes with tension 3 weeks later. Originally designed for internal disciplinary matters, today it hosts an unprecedented public proceeding. Community members fill the gallery. Department brass occupy the front row, expressions grim beneath dress caps. Diane sits at the prosecutor's table, case files arranged with military precision. Across the room, officers Brennan and Kowalski present stark contrasts in demeanor. Kowalski, shoulders slumped, occasionally makes eye contact with witnesses. Brennan sits rigidly, jaw muscles pulsing beneath tightly controlled fury. Police Commissioner Davis, flanked by 2 civilian oversight board members, calls the hearing to order. The positioning, law enforcement leadership alongside community representatives, represents the first fruit of Diane's reform package. This hearing will determine appropriate departmental action regarding officers Michael Brennan and Jason Kowalski. The commissioner begins. State Attorney Reynolds will present evidence of alleged misconduct. Diane approaches the podium, her charcoal suit a deliberate echo of what she wore during the stop. This isn't about a single traffic stop, she opens, voice clear and measured. It's about a pattern of discriminatory policing that undermines public trust and violates constitutional protections. For the next 40 minutes, she methodically constructs her case. Statistics demonstrating racial disparities in stops. Maps showing concentration of questionable stops in minority neighborhoods. Video testimony from previous victims whose complaints were dismissed. Officer Brennan appears in 7 prior complaints, all following the same pattern we observed in my own experience, Diane notes, displaying a timeline on the projection screen. Officer Kowalski became involved after partnering with Brennan, suggesting the influence of departmental culture on officer behavior. Lieutenant Morris takes the stand next, visibly uncomfortable but resolute. Had you received previous complaints about Officer Brennan? Diane asks. Yes. 3 came directly to my attention. And what actions were taken? Morris hesitates. They were noted in his file but determined to be unsubstantiated. Why unsubstantiated? Standard procedure was to accept the officer's account without further investigation. The gallery murmurs as this admission hangs in the air. Pastor Williams testifies next, describing community impact. People avoid driving through certain areas not because of crime, but because they fear police interaction. Parents have the talk with their children about how to survive traffic stops. This isn't public safety. It's public trauma. Throughout the morning, the department fractures visibly along generational and ideological lines. Older officers cluster supportively around Brennan. Younger officers distance themselves, physically and symbolically. After lunch recess, Kowalski unexpectedly requests to speak. His union representative shifts uncomfortably as he approaches the podium. I joined the force to help people, Kowalski begins, voice unsteady. Somewhere along the way, I started seeing threats instead of citizens. I didn't recognize what was happening until I watched those videos of us stopping the state attorney. He turns to face the gallery. I've spent 2 weeks reviewing my body camera footage from previous stops. I can't defend what I see in those videos. I'm willing to accept whatever consequences come. But more importantly, I want to be part of fixing this. The contrast with Brennan's testimony couldn't be starker. When his turn comes, Brennan delivers a practiced statement about officer discretion and public safety. Traffic stops are inherently dangerous, he insists. Split-second decisions protect lives. Second-guessing officers endangers everyone. During cross-examination, Diane is surgical. Officer Brennan, can you explain why your split-second safety decisions result in black drivers being stopped 8 times more frequently than white drivers? Demographics of high crime areas, he responds automatically. Yet data shows crime rates don't correlate with your stop patterns, Diane counters, displaying another chart. Your highest concentration of stops occurs in areas with below-average crime statistics, but above-average minority populations. Brennan's composure cracks. You can manipulate statistics to show whatever agenda you're pushing. Is that what you believe I'm doing, officer? Pushing an agenda? Diane asks calmly. This whole hearing is political theater, Brennan snaps. You're using one traffic stop to advance your career and undermine good police work. The commissioner interrupts. Officer Brennan, that's enough. After 4 hours of testimony, the panel deliberates briefly before delivering their decision. For Kowalski, 6-month suspension, mandatory completion of the newly established anti-bias training program, and 200 hours of community service in the affected neighborhoods. Upon completion, reassignment to Community Policing Unit. For Brennan, termination, effective immediately. Recommendation for criminal investigation regarding falsified reports and civil rights violations. As Brennan storms out, he mutters a threat just loud enough for Diane to hear. This isn't over. That evening, Diane finds her car window shattered in the courthouse parking garage. A crude message scratched into the paint. Know your place. 6 months later, Diane stands before a class of police academy recruits, her presence commanding respect that transcends her physical stature. The training facility, once a shrine to traditional policing methods, now features a prominently displayed community accountability charter. The badge gives you authority, she tells the attentive cadets, but your behavior determines whether you will have trust. Without trust, that authority becomes meaningless, or worse, destructive. Charts projected behind her display unmistakable trends. Stops without citations down 64%, civilian complaints reduced by 48%, successful prosecutions up 22% as community cooperation improves. These aren't just numbers, Diane emphasizes. These represent human experiences, constitutional rights, and the foundation of justice itself. Across town, Officer Kowalski leads a community engagement session at the West Side Community Center, the same neighborhood where Diane was stopped. Residents skeptically listen as he shares his transformation. I won't pretend one training program erased years of biased thinking, he admits, his honesty disarming. This is daily work. Every traffic stop, every interaction is a choice between the old way and what we're building now. In the governor's office, a press conference announces the statewide expansion of reforms pioneered in Precinct 24. Reporters' questions reflect lingering skepticism about institutional change. These aren't cosmetic adjustments, Governor Thompson asserts. State Attorney Reynolds has created structural accountability with real consequences for violations. The reforms include mandatory body cameras with civilian review access, quarterly auditing of stop demographics, and perhaps most significantly, a civilian oversight board with actual disciplinary authority. At Westland Mall, Michael Brennan watches the press conference on a display television while patrolling as a security guard. His face hardens as the camera cuts to Diane at the governor's side. He turns away, adjusting the mall security badge that replaced his police shield. Statistical overlays flash on screen. Traffic stops require documented cause, searches require consent or warrant, all footage automatically uploaded to secure servers accessible to defense attorneys. Complaint dismissals now require oversight board approval rather than command staff discretion. In Precinct 24's briefing room, once hostile territory, Diane presents quarterly findings to a mixed audience of officers and community representatives. The atmosphere remains tentative but markedly different from 6 months prior. Progress isn't linear, she acknowledges, addressing resistance head-on. Some metrics have plateaued, others show encouraging trends. What matters is sustained commitment to improvement. Lieutenant Morris, recently promoted to captain, leads the department's implementation team. The resistance we initially faced has diminished as results emerge, he reports. Officers increasingly recognize that constitutional policing makes their jobs safer and more effective. Beyond the original precinct, ripple effects spread throughout the state. 3 neighboring departments have voluntarily adopted similar measures. The state legislature debates codifying the reforms into law, with bipartisan support surprising political observers. For cases predating the reforms, a specialized review unit examines convictions stemming from potentially biased stops. 17 cases have been vacated, with dozens more under review. After a community forum, a young black woman approaches Diane. Her handshake is firm, her gaze direct. "I just passed the bar exam," she tells Diane. "Your work inspired me to apply for the district attorney's office." As they talk, neither notices Michael Brennan watching from across the street, his security guard shift ended, his resentment festering as he photographs them with his phone. 1 year after the stop that catalyzed change, Diane drives through the West Side district in her new electric sedan. The neighborhood pulses with morning energy, families heading to school, shops opening their doors, community members exchanging greetings. A patrol car approaches from the opposite direction. The officer behind the wheel, a young black woman, nods respectfully as they pass. No lights flash. No unwarranted stops occur. The interaction, or rather the lack of one, represents quiet victory. Diane parks outside the newly established West Side Community Justice Center, converted from a former precinct substation. Inside, the space hums with purposeful activity. Legal aid volunteers assist residents with everything from minor infractions to expungement applications. A retired judge conducts mediation sessions in what was once an interrogation room. "State Attorney Reynolds," Captain Morris greets her, extending his hand. "Good to see you here." "The quarterly numbers look promising," Diane observes, gesturing toward the data dashboard mounted on the wall. Green indicators dominate the display. Civilian complaints down 72% from previous year. Officer-involved incidents reduced by 58%. Community-initiated tips increased by 43%. "We're making real progress," Morris confirms. "Not perfect, but substantial." They tour the facility, passing a classroom where former Officer Kowalski leads a Know Your Rights training session for local teenagers. His presentation balances respect for law enforcement with clear explanation of constitutional protections. "He's become one of our most effective community liaisons," Morris notes. "The transformation has been remarkable." "People can change when systems allow it," Diane responds. "That was always the point." In the center's conference room, the Civilian Oversight Board prepares for its weekly meeting. The diverse group includes representatives from faith communities, civil rights organizations, and local neighborhoods. What began as an adversarial relationship with department leadership has evolved into cautious collaboration. Outside, Diane encounters a familiar face, the young attorney who approached her 6 months earlier. Now a junior prosecutor in the district attorney's office, she carries herself with growing confidence. "Ms. Morris," Diane greets her, "how's the new position?" "Challenging," Eliza Morris responds, "but I'm learning to navigate the system while working to improve it, just like you taught us." Diane smiles, recognizing her own journey and the younger woman's experience. That's the balance that matters. Change requires both pressure from outside and transformation from within. Later that afternoon, Diane reviews applications for the Expanded Justice Reform Initiative. The program, initially created for Precinct 24, now serves as a model for departments across the state. 17 agencies have voluntarily adopted its protocols. 12 more are in various implementation stages. A notification appears on her computer. The final statistics on Michael Brennan's cases have been compiled. 23 convictions vacated due to procedural violations and evidence of bias. 19 pending cases dismissed. The human cost of one officer's misconduct tallied in years of freedom lost and lives derailed. Diane closes the file with a mixture of satisfaction and somber reflection. The work continues. As evening approaches, she watches from her office window as 2 patrol officers handle a traffic violation downtown. Their interaction with the driver, a young black man, proceeds by the book. They remain professional, respect boundaries, explain the citation process clearly. This unremarkable scene, a routine traffic stop conducted properly, represents the invisible victory of reform. Not dramatic confrontations or public reckonings, but thousands of daily interactions conducted with dignity and respect. It was never about punishing individual officers, Diane remarks to Marcus as he prepares to leave for the day. It was about changing what happens when no one is watching. Even when someone is watching, Marcus adds, even when that someone is the state attorney herself. Diane nods, the memory of her own humiliation transmuted into purpose. Especially then. Has this story changed how you think about using your own privilege or position to create change? Let us know below. True power isn't in a title. It's in using your position to lift others when the system tries to push them down. Your comment matters. Which moment in Diane's story resonated most deeply with your own experiences? Remember to like this video and join the PAP Stories channel for more content that exposes injustice and celebrates the power of standing up for what's right.